This is CRM Audio, the Microsoft Business Applications podcast, with George Dubinsky, Joel Lindstrom, and Sean the CRM Hobbit Tabor. In this episode, we talked to Evan Chaki. Evan is Principal Program Manager with the Microsoft product team. KingswaySoft is a leading integration solution provider offering software solutions that make data integration affordable and painlessly easy. Thousands of enterprise clients from over 80 countries and regions rely on KingswaySoft to leverage their information assets. And KingswaySoft now works with CDS and PowerApps. KingswaySoft is a leading provider of Microsoft Dynamics integration software, including Dynamics 365, CRM, AX, NAV, GPSL, as well as many other applications. We thank KingswaySoft for sponsoring CRM Audio, the Microsoft Business Applications podcast. Welcome to CRM Audio. We are at Ignite in Orlando, Florida. We got the whole crew here. We got George, we got Sean, and we got special guest Evan Chaki. Hello, Evan.
Thanks for having me.
And Evan, you are a Principal Program Manager with Microsoft?
I am. Yeah, I'm on the PowerApps team.
Right. So you are over a variety of things: PowerApps, designers, ALM, which includes D365, basically any of the kind of maker experiences.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah, we want to, really my focus is how do we make the making experience the best it can be for SIs and really anyone that wants to make PowerApps.
Right. And a little background, Evan and I worked together at Customer Effective years and years ago. So yeah, great to be able to work with you now with Microsoft. So I'm really glad you're here because I mean you're PowerApps solutions sharing even in Dynamics. So that's great. So I don't know. I think let's start with kind of where we're going.
Yeah, so there's a few things that are coming soon within the month of October. Yeah. So and this is in the release notes, so
Sean,
it's nothing. Nothing too shocking, but we in October worldwide you'll be able to add Canvas apps and Microsoft Flows to a solution. So I'll be able to put all of those in, and so today.
Do I have ka-ching sound somewhere?
Yeah. So today, if I have a Power App, I can move that and my flow one at a time. So if you think about for enterprises, maybe you're doing a deployment where you want to move 10 or 15 apps at a time. It's literally one zip file at a time. Yes. So once we get that into solutions, it'll be just much easier to be able to package those together. Those will run inside of the dynamic solutioning system that we know of today. Mm-hmm. So if I have, let's say, some Canvas apps, some flows, some entities, some plugins, all of those kind of things, model-driven apps, I'll be able to move that from dev to UAT to prod all in one package without having to do separate.
So question about that. When I move a flow or move a Power App, Canvas app right now, it pops up and says, you need these connections. And if you don't have those connections, you have to set them up and your connection strings and all that. Is it going to work the same way then? When we import the solution, it's going to pop up and give us that screen that says, OneDrive, you don't have this connection. Do you want to use this connection?
Yeah, so in the first release that'll be out in October, we'll let you put it in the solution, and then we'll deploy it to your next environment for you. So when you put it into CDS, the flows will actually live in CDS. So that'll still live just like a process works today. Canvas apps will be slightly different starting in October, but we'll eventually have them move in. But in October, when I move it, we're going to put it in and move with the solution file. And then we're going to automatically deploy that to your environment into the PowerApps section for you. So when I do deploy that, if I have new connections or I want to, let's say, change a SharePoint list from UAT to prod, I'll need to open that up like I do today and update my connection within my Canvas app.
If I don't do that, will it just not work until I open it up?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So we're not going to have the situation where somebody moves a solution with the Power App and it starts updating the old connection if they wanted to point someplace else.
That's right. So the way that PowerApps works is the connections and the connectors are all by environment. So you don't have to worry about going from automatically hitting, let's say, production or dev.
What about default connector? Would it go through? Like CDS connector, would it flow through?
That one should work as long as your entities are there, right? So if your entities with it, then you should be able to just light it up and turn it on and off you go.
So basically the experience is very similar to what we have with the workflows that have dependencies, like on team So you say when you move, it's broken. And then you have to fix it, and then it's going to work.
So to me, that's when it really becomes the Power Platform, in that it's not these separate pieces. It's in the solution. It's easier to sell to clients that, hey, this is a standard component in a solution.
That's right.
Not just something separate that's outside of the system.
Does this take anything away from the requirement that you have to republish it every 6 months or so?
No. So the thing with the republishing every 6 months, there's a couple of misnomers that came up around that. So the one is, what we do is we lock you into a version, and that way you don't have to worry about changes happening. It's you deploy it once and you're there. If you don't repackage after 6 months, you're still in that version. But what we've been doing as a team is our number one item that we're focused on is quality and performance. So because you're locked into an older version of that package, you don't get all the new performance pieces. And that's why we're trying to encourage people, look, if you've had apps that have been out there for a while and you have not touched them, just go ahead and open them, save and publish. You're going to see big performance gains from what you saw 6 months ago or even 3 months ago.
Any reason why you couldn't do it on behalf of the customers?
Yes, so we do have an initiative I think we're going to start off probably with the SharePoint embedded forms to try to republish those automatically for users, because that's not something, once you're in SharePoint embedded, you don't necessarily go out there a lot to make changes. In the future, we're going to make it where you can, we're going to do that and help you do that, and then you can opt out if you say, you know what, this is some mission critical thing and I want to make sure I have full control over it. We'll let you go for so long, and then we'll shoot you emails and let you know that, hey, it's been a while, your app is locked into this old package. Do you want to go ahead and update?
It into your 6 months period.
So what happens, obviously you have a dev environment, that app's getting updated much more frequently than prod.
That's right.
And maybe you're on an annual release cycle. In a way, this kind of forces an IT organization to have more release cycles than they would normally have had.
Then you don't necessarily have to, so it's not going to stop working if you don't republish. You may just see the performance that you have today will be the performance you keep getting, but you could have performance that's 4 or 5 times faster, right? Especially from a load standpoint or for new features that we've released. Because you wouldn't be able to use any of those since it's kind of locked in history at that point.
So you've got flows and PowerApp, Canvas apps inside of solutions. Mm-hmm. How are dependencies for things like deletes handled? If I wipe out my CDS org, do my flows and PowerApps go goodbye? If I delete, am I going to be able to delete the PowerApp if there's a dependency in the solution? How does that work?
Yeah, so for October, if you delete let's say a flow, right? Either you delete it from the flow portal or you delete it from your environments, it's gone. It's just like any other object inside of Dynamics, right? I delete it, it's out of there. With more updates that we're going to put in, we'll have some more enhancements. So we're going to start to roll out things like full dependencies, probably the beginning of next year, where I will know that my Canvas app is dependent on these forms maybe, or these entities. My flows are dependent on these other things. So full dependencies are going to be coming early next year, along with things like backup and copy. So if I think about, let's say I want to go from prod and I want to make a backup copy of that. So the Canvas app won't, the actual MS app file, because it doesn't live inside of Dynamics today, it kind of lives outside. If I try to do a copy in October, I'll get my flows that I've put in that are solution aware, but my Canvas apps wouldn't be there. So in early 2019, we're going to work on that to make sure that as I know that things like that happen, as those hooks happen for backup and restore and copy, we'll do the right things. We'll bring that Canvas app back. We'll make if I do a restore on top of, let's say, production, we'll bring back that version of it. So there'll be more goodness coming in early 2019 with things like the dependencies, the backup and restore, and then a couple other things we'll be announcing in the next couple weeks.
So what is your recommendation? A lot of the stuff, like I've seen the EDX course and the app in a day material, which I thought was excellent. But a lot of that is not directed towards traditionally CRM people, but more directed towards PowerApps users, introducing them to model-driven apps. Recommends that people start building a model-driven app through App Designer and not go through solutions. Whereas it's been preached for years, best practice in the Dynamics world is start from a solution, put everything in a solution. So what is your recommendation? What is, from your perspective, the best and easiest way to start? Should I start just open up App Designer, start adding forms and views from there? Or should I still start from a solution and build my app on top of that?
I think it really depends on where you're comfortable with. So with the App in the Day training, we are training a lot of people that are brand new to app development in general, right? They may not have any experience with Dynamics, any experience with PowerApps. So we try to say what's the easiest place to do that. And that's really going to web.powerapps.com, say new model-driven app, and off they go. And it launches the App Designer.
Okay.
I think for SIs, for people listening that may have more experience from a Dynamics standpoint, that may be where you say, look, I'm used to going into a solution, and I'll have a plug here. We have a new updated experience that you'll be able to start using in October for solutioning from the web.powerapps.com portal. So you can either use the classic experience or our new experience and just start there. If that's where you're comfortable with, start there. It's really up to you where you want to start. And then, of course, as you guys know, you can always do add existing and add in anything that you want, or be very specific on the types of items you want to add in from either the classic experience or the new experience.
So you're taking the middle of the road, you can do either one, right?
You can.
Okay. So one thing I found is going from CDS and building my entities out there's some things I really like. I think I can more quickly add fields there. There's a couple of what I think are kind of rough spots right now. Like if you go in to add the formula for the calculated field, it pops up basically the CRM configuration screen for that. That's a little bit mixed UIs there right now. What's the time frame for that being totally in the new designer experience?
Yeah, so that's one thing we're really focused on is how do we unify the two worlds, right? We know, and I don't know if anyone on the podcast has counted, there are lots of designers out there. I think the last count I saw was like in the high 40s of things that need to be given some love and updated a little bit. So that's really our focus, is we want to have one unified workspace and experience where I can build everything and everything looks and feels the same. So today, if you think about maybe the view designer is a bit old, but it has slightly different UI than maybe the form designer. You have to go to different places to do different things. We're working to unify all of those things where even if it's day one, you kind of know based on using Office where to go and how to do things. And in fact, the View Designer is one that's coming out in October with the new UI. So that'll be a great new experience where people can get a sense and a flavor for where this is headed. And then you'll start to see a lot of those really core UIs come next. So we're looking from a data standpoint of who uses what the most. So we see that View Designers by far use the most. That's where we wanted to start. Form designers coming in as a preview by the end of the year. So just with those two, you can think about, hey, look, from the portal, I can make my entities, I can make my fields, I can make my views, I can make my forms, I can put all those into a solution. So I'm getting there. There's still a few more key pieces that people use a lot. So those will be the next ones that we focus on. So what we want to do is, in a hopefully very short amount of time, get it where people can feel comfortable. Look, I can use the classic UI if that's what I'm comfortable with, but I can at least give it a try with the new UI and say, ooh, I can get maybe 99% of the way there or 100% of the way there. And some of these one-off things that I may use once in a while, like a mail template or something like that, sure, maybe the old UI pops up for a while, but eventually we'll consolidate all that into one place.
Yeah, that makes sense. George?
Well, as long as it pops up, because my experience sometimes was that as Microsoft was building kind of new experience, and so we have classic UI and we have unified client, and sometimes I feel it's like It's like you guys building a new bridge, and
Right.
you're saying, "Hey, look, yeah, our bridge is kind of 70% complete. You have to jump over to this bridge, right?" So it's kind of. It would be nice to have it completed, right? The bridge. It may be shonky here and there, but at least I'll be able to do my journey on one bridge instead of jumping between the two. Oh, you have to go all the way back and cross using the old bridge because you're carrying too much. That's what actually very it breaks developer experience because you don't know what to expect as a developer, where it's gonna break, which luggage is gonna turn you back and say, oh, that's over the limit, you have to check it in.
That's great feedback.
And are you going to, for the form designer, are you going to take advantage of the look and feel of unified client so that the form designer looks more akin to it as opposed to the old form?
So as far as developers concerned, we did talk about it a little bit earlier, but one of the challenges, I guess, is the inability to package things with my design, whatever I created, right? And that starts, the story goes a long way back, for example, when we package workflows that depend on some items that are effectively data items, like I may be allocating to some queue item in the workflow to a specific queue, right? Moving it across breaks this workflow. Same goes for connectors, for example. I move connector across, right? I need to configure it, so it's broken after I move it. To continue the story,
was when they introduced access teams, but didn't give you the ability to move the profiles with the solution. Right.
Yeah.
So, then you would
it boils down to ability to move the data, plus basically apply some kind of transformation, so tweak it around the edges. And currently the solution is package deployer, which kind of not an administrative experience. It's a developer experience. Even if I want just to import CSV file, I have to fire up package deployer template, which doesn't exist for 2017, for Visual Studio 2017, create an absolutely dummy DLL, which is like 4K in size, with the sole purpose that to be able to deploy and do it in one step. So what's coming?
You do this in your sleep by now, though, George.
That's what I do. I'm currently well asleep because it's 4:44 a.m. for me. So I'm currently well asleep. So I'm talking in my sleep, if you will.
So I do have excellent news for you and for people that are doing things like workflow and other things that you have to open up, like I said, connectors. So we're going to be introducing a new concept called parameters. So it'll be parameters that you can have in your environments. And you can tag those to say, look, when I move this thing, it'll start with Microsoft Flows. So you can say, when I move this flow, I want to hook up to this parameter that's already defined. And when I move it in the solution, when it's actually importing in, we're going to automatically update and re-hook up to, let's say, a new SharePoint site or a new thing that you have in your parameter. So we will update your item as it's coming in. And that way you don't have to do some of these crazy things. So you can create your parameters. You can say these are the names. I can hook it up to, again, with flows and then with Canvas apps, and then we'll probably extend it to other things. So that way, as you move your solution, either through the API or manually, you'll be able to start to use parameters to make that easier.
It sounds a bit similar to what, let's say, web app, people who deploy web apps have right now, like you go through web config effectively and you pull stuff out of there and you parameterize your flow or whatever.
Exactly. Same type of concept, but we're going to make it a little less developer intrinsic and more have a UI for it, so that way someone can build those kind of things, and if you have secrets, we'll be able to lock those down.
So with the whole solutioning and the move to the unified interface, when are we going to start to see some of those Canvas-like controls in the unified interface?
Yeah, so there's a few things coming. So within, I think by the end of the year, we have a preview coming out where I can embed a Canvas app inside of Model Driven. So that's something that's coming, and it's going to come in the classic form experience first. So I'll be able to, from the classic, hit a button, pick an app, and then deploy it in there. So the other thing that Yes, better than an iframe. It's going to be actually a PCF control, so it'll be.
The one that we can't get SDK for. Yes,
right.
Right.
I think there's a preview out for that too. But so it'll be in our new PowerApps control framework, and then you'll start to see more and more of that, where controls are going to be able to be reused. So I think you'll, again, not only a unification on the portal side, but you'll start to see a unification between the platforms to make it easier to build custom things, easier for SIs to just build what the customer needs without having to worry too much about, do I build it this way, do I build it that way? It'll really be just build the best way that is best for the customer.
Are we going to see the connectors that are available for Canvas apps and model-driven apps?
So connectors are going to be one thing. If you think about a dependency tree, right? So if I have flows or Canvas apps that are dependent on custom connectors or the out-of-the-box connectors, you'll start to see those coming in to CDS, and then we'll make some more announcements as we start to kind of fill that in as we go.
Okay. So one thing I didn't know until we started this podcast was that you are involved with the sharing interface for Dynamics and model-driven PowerApps. And here's the feedback I get from sharing is the sharing and the share icon that are used in Dynamics mean different things in other applications than in Dynamics.
Sure.
If I am in my phone, Windows 10, I hit the share button, which looks a lot like the share button inside Dynamics. It means I want to share this with another application, like share it with Facebook, share it with Twitter, share it with, send an email to somebody. Where in Dynamics, it's I want to grant permission to somebody for this record. Sure. And I find that just the way that the world has moved is a confusing point.
Sure. You know what we say to our customers? Our slogan is, if you share, you don't care. Right?
Barney?
Sorry?
Yeah.
Barney, the purple dinosaur sharing is caring?
No, that's the opposite. Like if you share, you don't care.
Reference.
Yeah.
So sharing within PowerApps is definitely different than sharing within Dynamics, right? So within PowerApps, if you think about, we also have a new UI coming with sharing from the web.powerapps.com portal coming around the middle of October. So when I share, I'll be able to not only share with AAD groups for PowerApps like I do today, and users, but I can also start to see what things are shared within my app. So I can see things like, my app is using CDS, and it's using these 4 entities. So we're making the first step to try to call that out to say, look, don't forget you're not just sharing your app with people, but you need to share the data on the back end.
To the connectors it uses.
Exactly, because a lot of times
does it trigger like the licensing as well? Like, are you getting like if my app, for example, requires a specific license, right, I need to be able, when I share it, I need kind of flag it for people. Hey, look, you're on P1, you need P2.
Yeah, so we started doing that a bit in the UI. So if you use, let's say, the case entity, so we've started to call that out in PowerApps that look, this is premium. So not only do you need it's a premium connector, but this actual entity is premium too, because you need sales and to use that same thing. So I need CE to use certain entities. So we are starting to call out to users that, look, if you use these entities, if you use these things, these are premium. So we want to try to call that out also across the board. So users, the makers really know that, look, I made this great thing, but by the way, if I share it with everyone in my enterprise, then only people that have certain licensing, maybe it's Dynamics licensing or P2, can use these type of entities. So we are starting to call that out a bit. What we want to do is take it a bit further in the future, where I not only tell the user, look, you've added these users, don't forget to share with CDS or don't forget to share with SharePoint. We are going to be doing things like making it easier where I don't have to make another step. I can just say, look, I've shared with this Active Directory group, or I've shared with these users. I see the entities that are part of this app, and we'll start to light up new UIs to say, great, well now I can just automatically create a security role for this app, for these users, and I can give them these type of security for the entities that are used in this app. So we're trying to get away from a lot of the friction that has to happen today. I know personally when I was doing Dynamics, I would make new entities and I'd roll them out and say, oh, great, they're all ready to use. And then users would say, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't see anything. You go, okay. I forgot to actually add it to the security role.
The other piece about the current sharing and your update that's coming, it's kind of a black hole. I share a record with Sean. It's not obvious I've shared this with Sean unless I dig into the sharing menu and then I can see it shared. But then you got the whole cascading shares and indirect shares. Are you doing anything with that to make that a little bit more visible? Like if I want to see who is this record shared with, both directly and indirectly,
Are you looking for something like OneDrive experience where show me the item shared with me?
Some customers want that, yeah.
And even if it was in the Office 365 Security Center, even if it was something there, that would be valuable. It doesn't necessarily have to be right in the Dynamics UI.
So my focus is on the PowerApps sharing. So the kind of platform team will be focused on the older, I guess, pop-ups and things. So I'm not quite sure what their plans are, if there are any plans to do anything different there. Yeah.
Okay. So
I do have a question. It's about maker experience. We had conversation, Joe. We had conversation this morning, and Joe.
I have no memory of this conversation.
Yeah, basically said, look, I kind of like Canvas experience, and it's new, it's interesting. It does kind of makes it easier for certain type of power users to get started and so on. The problem I have with that right now is that the same problem I have with Excel. When you look at it, you don't know what's under the hood, right? So let me give you an analogy, right? The VDub has been the bestseller, and one of the things that made this car bestseller is that you can open it up, you can fix it up, regardless which country you're in, and it's got like 5 moving parts, and that's it, right? And then you have, on the other hand, you've got BMW Series 7, you open it, and it's a block.
By the way, they just announced they're discontinuing it.
Yes, I know, but it had a good run, right?
There's a reason,
So it had a good run. So the point I'm trying to make, like when I'm as admin or as developer, look at things that my users create, I don't mind them creating things, but I want to be able kind of, open it up, apply an X-ray and see the dependencies and what they're talking about. Effectively, right now, if they created a solution, I can use basically a solution packager, unpack it, It's XML, yeah, okay, but at least it's kind of readable and I can compare things and so on. Right now, PowerApps, Canvas, right, they're black boxes. Until you start digging and start clicking individual buttons, you don't know what's really going on, where dependencies are, where circular dependencies, where performance hits are because they use the wrong connector, and so on and so forth. What's coming here? What would help me to kind of unpack it, have a look inside, unpack it back?
Yeah, so I think once we start traveling more things in a solution, I think you'll be able to take a harder look at that, right? So because everything will be inside of the database, inside of a solution writing in a zip file, I think you'll be able to, in the future, start to look at that a bit clearer. There's some admin APIs that we have, it won't necessarily solve your problem, but at a higher level tenant area, I can start to see, well, who are the users making the apps at least, right? What do they have? What kind of connectors do they have? What are they shared for? Yeah. So, maybe if you see, hey, Joel's made 50 apps, maybe I want to go and talk to him and see what's going on.
So I think and now I remember the conversation. Basically, the idea is dynamics and model-driven apps give us a framework. Mm-hmm. You've got a save button, a delete button. You've got these standard walls you work within to do things, where with Canvas apps, it's a canvas, and I can make the button do whatever I want, and I can have an expression on here that does this, and I can have an expression over here that impacted that. And so how do you support the makers of PowerApps similar to how you support Dynamics and model-driven apps?
Yeah, so it's definitely a little harder. You're not on as tight rails as you are with Dynamics. Although, I'd say even with Dynamics, if you think about web resources that you put in, right? I can put in a huge block of JavaScript function, call that all over the place. I have a dependency that I know, this is being called somewhere within my form or within these forms. So it's kind of similar to that, where within my Canvas app, as a best practice, ideally your users can use our new commenting features to say, hey, this is what this does. It definitely makes it easier for support overall to say what's happening. But so there's a little bit of that, I think, on both sides to figure out as a group or as at a company level, what are the things that we want to train our users to do and how to do them best. There's kind of a bar that I think about where there's citizen developers that are building things, and within each company, there's going to be some bar where they're going to say, look, when you get up to this level, when you're trying to have this many users use your app, we're going to take a look at that, and we're going to have a nice meeting together and talk about like, hey, looks like you've made a pretty awesome app at the department level or division level. We're going to enterprise that now, and we're going to make sure that goes through ALM, and it goes through all the life cycle, and we're going to make sure it's rock solid, and we're going to look at analytics on what's the performance look like. So I think there's going to be a kind of a steep hill where you're going to have a bar, you're going to kind of cut off the citizen developers and say, let's work together to make this enterprise class. I think part of that is going to help where you can say, look, we're going to put you a bit more on rails, and then that's where you use more of the solution, right? You'd say citizen developers can do their piece. If it's just the four of us around the table and I made an app and I want to share that, great. But once you have something more mission critical, you want to have it live in the life cycle and go from place to place. And I think that's where you'd start to see more about how to document it correctly and how to make it more enterprise class.
Yeah, but my challenge with that is like, okay, I set the bar, and right now I have no idea where to set it. So if I set it here, let's say I set it a bit too high. So by the time I get my hands on the app, it's already far down the road, and it's a mess. And suddenly it becomes, because people start using it, it's a business critical mess. Right, so now I need to untangle it, and there is nothing right there to help me out. And what I'm afraid of, that we find ourselves in a situation where we found ourselves with the workflow a couple of versions back, where the workflow is there, you can edit it sometimes, you can't kind of indent things and what's not, and on top of that, it's a binary. Right, so you couldn't do anything. And even now, it's no longer binary, but the moment I touch it, I can no longer go back to the editor, right? So it's you on your own. So, and I'm afraid, like, repeat of the same experience, so by the time the Canvas app comes to me as developer, architect, admin, whatever, it's just too late. It's such a pile, it's such a mess that I would need to go literally handpick every single element and figure out what does it do. And I would show it like, Sean, what is supposed to do? And Sean goes like, I don't know, I wrote it a year ago. Right, I don't remember. Like, Joel has no recollection of this morning conversation.
You can get that same thing with model-driven and Dynamics, because, I mean, Evan and I had a configuration way back when, before the case management, the auto case creation came in, where it's all plugin driven and about 15 workflows. And it would basically take an email and a queue and create a case, and somebody said, I want that to match to a project. So then they got, who's the project manager? And it is such an unmanageable mess that you can't
I totally understand. The difference is that with model-driven apps, the mess, and refer to your example with JavaScript, this mess would be created by people who at least know how to create mess.
Perfect, right.
It's kind of organized chaos, right? So at least it's kind of, you're giving them a big gun, right? And this is developers. They kind of supposed to be trained how to use the gun. So nice, every now and then someone shoots their foot off, no big deal, right? And then you have this untrained civilian, so to speak, running around with, AK AK-47s and shooting everything in their side.
I don't know if it's still this way, but it at least used to be where in the standard security roles, people like sales managers create user-level workflows.
No, look.
I totally dig it. I'm saying, like, let's not repeat bad parts of the history. Give us the tools that help us to kind of open the hood on the application, read what's inside, kind of get the dependencies out, and at least help us document this thing to understand what the heck users wrote.
And I think the changes, not only from a developer perspective, but from consultants or architects when we're moving solutions, and if we're not doing an automated build, that same kind of issue comes into play a lot. Now, the improvements we had recently with, being able to identify that there are dependencies rather than having to go check them first, and the hyperlinks to helpful information, that's all good. But what I can see is with the addition of Flow and with the addition of Canvas apps, that's going to be more exponential. And if you have a consultant who isn't really familiar with PowerApps or Flow, it's going to be even more mad.
The one thing I have seen, though, working with customers where I've had customers call me up and I've flown out and looked at their app, and within 5 minutes I can say, look, I can see your app is very unperformance. Let me crack it open. And even within those customers, within 30 minutes, we've reworked their whole app. Because the nice thing with PowerApps is you can quickly look and say, okay, on load, I can see that all these calls are going on, right? So you can quickly figure out where performance problems are. So you can't get yourself too far in a hole, because it's I can't write JavaScript. I can't do like crazy fancy development stuff in there. So with some customers, just from personal experience, I've gotten in within an hour. We've taken their app from like a 2-minute load time to 5-10 seconds, because it's just sometimes they're calling lots of things. They're calling every table within Dynamics at the same time, bringing back every record. So the other thing that we have coming out that will be very important to the people listening is something called Solution Checker. So Solution Checker will take a look at your solution. It will look through all of the code in your solution. It will then go against a library to figure out how performance or unperformance your solution is. And then it gives you an Excel file that you can look at and say, great. And it tells you to the T, like, look at this plugin on this line, and this is unsupported code, or this is an infinite loop, or whatever those kind of things are.
In general, you suck.
Yeah. So, but
is that
that's
something that you're going to be? I mean, does that get smarter over time?
Absolutely.
Is there a way for us to suggest things if we see a bad configuration and it didn't catch this? You should look for that.
Yeah. So this will be in the portal to start. It's something that the team's been working on. And it really came out of some of our support teams where they were working with customers and trying to figure out, wow, what's going on with this environment? It's just not working. So they took a lot of their learnings there and built it into their product. So what you'll start to see is from the web.powerapps.com portal, I'll be able to click on a solution, run Solution Checker. It takes a few minutes to run. It'll tell you when it's done. And then you'll be able to export that Excel file and start to look at it. So I think in the future that'll keep maturing, where maybe just guessing, it could be like, oh, maybe you get a grade or you get some rating, and this could be great for customers and for SIs and ISVs to know, hey, do we make something on this build that didn't work as well as it did the last build, or it's not as fast or performant as it used to be.
Are you guys looking to bring something what Visual Studio team done with AI?
That was like smashing when they loaded about 30 or 40 thousand projects from GitHub into AI, look through them, and then basically in real time they can look at your code and say, you know what, best people don't do that, what you just done. It's kind of, are you looking for something like that, self-learning system over the time that learns the best practices?
I'm sure we will, right? I mean, we're one Microsoft, so we're really focused on those type of technologies to make it easier. What we really want to do is make it where our customers have good experiences, right? Whether they're making it themselves, someone else made it for them, they're dropping in something from AppSource. We want to try to help it where look, we want you to be as fast as possible so your users are constantly up and productive. So how do we keep adding more technology and more AI and thought process to that to make it easier? So this is kind of the first step of that route.
The first step, can I suggest the first step? It's been in discussion a long time. Can we have the box that says lock and manage layer?
I will add that to my list of things.
No, but it's been discussed. I mean, surely it's been discussed internally, and particularly, it's coming back to those customers who go around with the guns and shoot themselves in the foot. Right. Sometimes you want to say, lock the managed layer, don't let them touch it.
Right.
So, okay, after the release where flows can be included in solutions, and solution and flow is pretty much at parity with workflow, what's your recommendation? If we have a situation that can be done with workflow, should we now be using flow? Should we invest time in rewriting some of our workflows as flows? What do you think?
I think the best way to get started is to look at your process and figure out, look, is this fit inside the Dynamics box or the CDS box just by itself, right? If it does, okay, great. Maybe workflows are still okay. If you say, it can, but what I'm really trying to do is when I save a record, today I have a plugin and it goes and it calls some other system and it updates a record over there. Don't do that anymore. Use Microsoft Flow, right? I mean, we have 230 connectors plus custom connectors for a reason. So
you
that way
make your notification emails prettier.
You can, yeah.
Yeah, and the other...
Exactly.
The thing, though, that is in the back of my mind and other people I've talked to is workflows are kind of like all you can eat. You can do as many as you want, where Flow, you've got a certain count as part of your license,
right.
Potentially additional license costs you could run into with them. So that's what I'm tempered by. I don't want to tell people just go rip out all your workflows if they work for you.
Sure. It depends on how many users you have. I think I can't remember the exact number, but on our pricing page at PowerApps.com, we've got I think it's maybe 2,000 flows per user.
And that's a big pool at every.
It's a big pool. It's by the tenant level. So I've talked to some customers that have tens of thousands of users, and we run the numbers and we go, look, are you going to use 25 million flows per month? Are you going to have that many transactions running through your system? They go, no. Maybe 1 million, maybe 2 million. So
there's always that one time you forgot to turn it off and triggered a million runs of a workflow.
That's right.
That brings up another thought: is what is the point where if you had a flow and you ran a big integration that loaded 300,000 records, does it keep up? Is it scaled to that level?
It definitely scales. It's the numbers I've heard internally about the number of flows that kick off per day are extreme. It's amazing the number of customers that we have using flows.
Write it down, Sean. Extreme. It's a new number.
It is extreme.
And one thing I've appreciated from when I use it is getting an email when it fails, which I don't with my workflow, and having the ability to retry it. And usually when it fails, maybe a year and a half ago, I saw some flakiness with my flows just from the platform. Now it's usually there's something like a character in the file or something that is making it fail. There's a reason it's failing. It's not just failing for some mystery reason.
Yeah, and the other thing I think you'll see too with Flow is, we have a whole Flow team, right? So their whole focus is to make it easier, faster, more performance. So, and you get changes every week. You get new features every week. You get new performance enhancements every week. So that is kind of a nice thing with Flow over maybe the classic workflow, where classic workflow, it's kind of your engine. You've got it. Sure, you can make some plugins and things to make it do other things, but having a whole team at Microsoft just focused on new enhancements and feedback. I'd say the other thing is if you have feedback, whether it's on PowerApps or Flow, the community site is an awesome place to go. I know personally as our product team, we look at that every day of what are the top items that people are voting on, what kind of things are people asking for that are new, and then we put it in the backlog and put it on the roadmap. That's something that we have to report up to say, what are the top items that people have asked for that aren't on the roadmap or we don't have in the next 6 months that we're focused on, and we have to be accountable for that. So it's a great thing don't feel like, oh, I put an item up there and lots of people vote on it and no one's actually paying attention to it. It's something, I know personally, I look at it every day at lunch. I go out there and look at what the top items are, what things are being asked for in the community that we don't have.
Well, the other thing I like about Flow, more so than Dynamics or Flow, is now you're starting to see it in other apps. So it's really extending the user experience outside of Dynamics, which for a lot of us is kind of foreign. Where the old mantra was if you had another screen pop up, bad. Everything should be on that screen, or everything should be in Dynamics. You shouldn't have to go anywhere else. Whereas now it's that whole Microsoft 365 where you're going all over the place, and that's okay because they all do different things, but they're doing it in conjunction. They're doing it together. It's seamless. So.
Not only just that, but I think as you learn Flow, as you learn Canvas apps and PowerApps, those skills, like you mentioned, they go everywhere now. It's not just I'm a Dynamics customizer, and that's what I know, and that's kind of I'm in my box. As you start to pick up these new skills, you can do pretty much anything anymore because you're right. It's built into Teams, it's built into Excel. It's everywhere. You can start to make solutions that go across your whole company, not just within the box of Dynamics.
Okay. So, what are you most excited about from the October release?
Ooh, there's lots of things that are coming. I think for me, the combination of CDS and PowerApps coming together. So it's things like the View Designer, just so people can see a first look at where we're going from a making standpoint, from a maker standpoint.
Will we be able to do not in?
Not in, yes, that is one thing that I made sure the team was put in. It was funny to see that in Advanced Find and not in other places. Yeah. So that was one thing I definitely called out that we heard a lot of feedback on. So you'll be able to see.
It's only been in the backlog, 10 years?
Yeah.
It's not been in.
It's not been in the backlog.
Right. So yeah, some of those features that that are painful. I mean, I know because I have experience trying to put things like how do you do not in and how do you do some of these other things. So the View Designer is going to ship with some good first functionality, and then we're going to keep layering in new functionality, more advanced find features and more filtering. And the biggest thing that I've heard so far from people that have kind of beta tested it for us is in the past when you have to resize a column, you double click on it, you get 4 choices, and then that's it, right? Yep. The new one, as easy as it sounds, is you can make it any size that you want. You just click on it, and just like any modern UI, you resize it, you hit save and publish, and off you go.
God help us.
So that'll definitely.
This is one of those areas where I would say that a limited choice was a good decision. It created a consistency. Right. Sometimes, yes, I did want 72 instead of 75 pixels, but I could live with 75, but limited number of choices was actually a good thing.
At a restaurant, the menu would be like one item, hamburger.
No, if I had a restaurant, my restaurant would be open on every Tuesday and Thursday from 8:30 till 10 p.m. and on every rainy third Wednesday of the month. And I guarantee you people would queue up for it.
All right.
For that cold potato soup.
Cabbage.
Cabbage.
All right. Well, thank you, Evan.
No problem.
This has been enlightening, and thanks for sharing what's coming. We're looking forward to the new Maker experience, and definitely good to see things getting updated, some of the things that haven't been touched for a while. Tried and true, but it's time for a change.
It will be interesting to see.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks. This has been CRM Audio, the Dynamics 365 podcast. Send us your feedback at voice@crm.audio. Check out our other shows at crm.audio or subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and any place else podcasts are offered. This podcast is a production of Dynamics Podcast, LLC.